In this video, we're looking at the 7800 XT up against the 9070 XT. This is useful for a few reasons. One is you might have a 7800 XT and wonder how much better would it be if I upgraded to a 9070 XT, or maybe you're looking at buying a new GPU. You're like, I used 7800 XT is a lot cheaper than a 9070 XT, especially at the current pricing. If you're watching this video as of the time of filming, more on value and current pricing towards the end. But also, this is an interesting matchup because the 7800 XT is a 60 compute unit card, and the 9070 XT is a 64 compute unit card from the next generation. So they have a similar amount of compute units. But notice the ray tracing performance improvement generationally here. It's absolutely massive. So we'll start with ray tracing, and then we'll look at a lot of other stuff, FSR 4, FSR 3, a bunch of games without ray tracing, all of that. But in Cyberpunk 2077 at 1080p RT Ultra, no upscaling or anything, the 9070 XT can hit 81 FPS, 7800 XT can only hit 47, and that is a 72% improvement. So AMD really did deliver on a massive generational improvement to the ray tracing. At 1440p RT Ultra, you can see that the 9070 XT is delivering 51 FPS versus 30 on the 7800 XT. That is a 70% improvement, with the major caveat of the 9070 XT still only being around 51 FPS, so it's maybe not the frame rates you'd want to hit at a native resolution. Which means let's go ahead and kick on FSR. Now, Cyberpunk only officially supports FSR 3. There is no current FSR 4 implementation, although I did cover in a recent video how to mod FSR 4 into Cyberpunk using Optiscaler. So if you're interested, you could do that, but in GPU reviews, I don't use third-party tools or mods. I'm looking at what is the general user experience in the game as it's implemented, because I think it's a more niche experience to go out of your way to find ways to mod in FSR 4 and things like that. But it is available for those willing to do it. Anyway, with FSR 3 quality on both, the 9070 XT is now hitting 89 FPS, which is a nice high refresh rate experience, although you'll notice some shimmering on the palm tree branches and things, general loss of detail. FSR 3 doesn't really look great in this game. It's 68% faster, though, than the 7800 XT, which is at a playable but not amazing 53 FPS. Now, at 4K, you're going to have to go down to performance mode upscaling to get a good frame rate even on the 9070 XT, and it hits 71 FPS. So frame rate, very playable, but again, I think you'll have a much better experience if you try to mod FSR 4 into the game for a much higher quality upscale. But anyway, apples to apples comparison here, the 7800 XT is hitting 42 FPS, and the 9070 is 69% faster. Nice. Now, if we go ahead and switch over to Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, we'll see that at 1080p Supreme settings, which is not enabling the full path tracing mode, but does still include ray tracing, because this game always uses ray tracing, so you can't avoid ray tracing in all games. The 9070 XT here is actually only showing a 29% improvement at 129 versus 108, sorry, 28% improvement. At 1440p Supreme settings, we're seeing the 9070 XT hitting 104 FPS, and the 7800 XT hitting 78, so it's a 33% advantage for the newer card. So we're noticing that in a lighter ray tracing workload, or at least the ray tracing workload in this game, we're not seeing anything like the extremely dramatic improvements we saw with Cyberpunk RT Ultra. At 4K Supreme, similar story. We're seeing 64 FPS versus 45, although this is a bit of a better lead than we saw at the lower resolutions with a 42% for the 9070 XT. And you could kick on quality FSR 3 upscaling to hit 106 FPS on the 9070 XT, and the 7800 XT hit 64. So actually, we're now seeing a 66% advantage for the 9070 XT. So it looks like based on the resolution and the exact settings you're using and upscaling and all of that, the exact differentials between these two cards can vary a bit. Let's move on to Silent Hill 2 as another ray tracing test. This is Unreal Engine 5, and this is a hardware-accelerated version of Lumen. So 1080p max settings with hardware RT enabled. We're seeing the 9070 XT 58% faster at 76 FPS versus 48. If you go up to 1440p resolution, again, epic settings, hardware RT turned on, no upscaling, we're seeing the 7800 XT can only hit 35 FPS, whereas the 9070 XT can hit 55, putting it 57% faster, although still not quite averaging 60 FPS. If you kick on FSR 3 quality, again, no FSR 4 available in this game. We're seeing 9070 XT hit 77 FPS and the 7800 XT hit 49, putting the 9070 XT 57% faster. In 4K resolution, you'll need to go down to performance mode upscaling to hit around 60 FPS on the 9070 XT, putting it 55% faster than the 7800 XT at 65 FPS versus 42 respectively. Now, if we turn off ray tracing for the rest of the video, we'll now see that the 9070 XT's leads are generally less impressive, although still substantial. The 1080p Epic settings, no hardware RT, but still using software-based lumen. We're seeing 94 FPS versus 67, so a 40% advantage for the 9070 XT. In 1440p resolution at Epic settings, but again, no hardware RT, just software-based lumen, we're seeing the 9070 XT 38% faster at 66 FPS versus 48. You could go ahead and kick on quality level upscaling, especially for the 7800 XT to break 60 FPS and hit 68, whereas the 9070 XT is 43% faster, averaging 97 FPS here. At 4K Epic settings, the 9070 XT is hitting 36 FPS, the 7800 XT is at 26, so neither of them is doing a good job, though the 9070 XT is 38% faster. If you go all the way to performance mode upscaling, the 7800 XT can almost hit 60 FPS, averaging 57, whereas the 9070 XT is 39% faster, averaging 79. If we jump into Horizon Forbidden West at 1080p very high settings, that is the maximum settings the game has to offer, the 9070 XT is hitting 150 FPS, but the 7800 XT is doing great as well at 105, but the new GPU is 43% faster. Now, at 1440p very high settings, the 9070 XT is hitting 121 FPS versus 82 on the 7800 XT. They're both doing a nice job, but the 9070 XT is 48% faster. I think you'd still be very happy with the experience on the 7800 XT, though. At 4K max settings, the 9070 XT is still hitting 76 FPS, doing a very nice job at native 4K max settings, whereas the 7800 XT is hitting 51. The 9070 XT is 49% faster here. You may want to use upscaling, and if we set both to FSR 3 at the quality settings, the 7800 XT is now able to break 60 FPS, hitting 66, but the 9070 XT can hit 101 FPS, 53% faster. Now, at the quality setting at 4K, FSR 3 looks reasonably okay in this game. I think you would have a decent experience. That being said, the newer GPU is capable of FSR 4, which is supported through a driver-level override in this game without needing to mod anything. If we do that, notice the 9070 XT drops a few FPS, so it drops to 96, but it's still 45% faster than the 7800 XT. And the image quality does look better, especially look at things like the hair in motion. The FSR 4 algorithm is preserving a lot more detail. Also look at things behind the arm as it's swinging, things like that, disoccluded objects. A lot more detail, less ghosting if you look at things like the bow and arrow. Like it kind of ghosts a little bit in motion with FSR 3. It looks very crystal clear on FSR 4. Anyway, let's move to God of War Ragnarok at 1080p Ultra. We're seeing both GPUs doing well. The 7800 XT is hitting 77 FPS, but the 9070 XT is hitting 130 FPS, which is 69% faster. Nice. At 1440p resolution, the 9070 XT is hitting 106 FPS versus 66 on the 7800 XT. 7800 XT is doing fine, but the 9070 XT is 61% faster. So we're seeing an outsized lead here on the 9070 XT compared to most other games. This is also a game where I've noticed that AMD's previous generation just kind of struggled a bit relative to NVIDIA. So it does seem like the 9000 series has closed a bit of whatever issue the 7000 series has had with this game, although even the 9000 series does perform below its average result compared to newer NVIDIA cards in this game. But again, this does seem to have helped. At 4K Ultra, the 9070 XT is hitting 69 nice FPS. The 7800 XT is hitting 45, which is objectively less nice, and the 9070 XT is 53% faster. Now, this game does support FSR 3 and has a driver override for FSR 4 for the 9000 series GPU. Using FSR 3 quality, the 7800 XT can hit 59. The 9070 XT using FSR 3 quality, so like-for-like settings, hits 95, so 61% faster. But if I was actually playing this game on the 9000 series card, I would use FSR 4. At the quality setting, the FPS drops slightly compared to FSR 3, and drops to 89 FPS on the 9070 XT. The 7800 XT is still at 59 because it's still using FSR 3, so it's the same test. This puts the 9070 XT 51% faster, but is now producing a crisper, clearer image in motion. Again, 4K quality upscaling is usable with FSR 3, but FSR 4 is looking better. Now, Hellblade 2 at Senua's Saga, 1080p high settings, and high is the highest settings in this game. There's no epic or ultra or anything like that. We see the 7800 XT doing a nice job, 78 FPS, but the 9070 XT is hitting 108, putting it 38% faster than the last generation card. At 1440p max settings, we see the 7800 XT hitting just under 60 FPS at 57, perfectly playable in this slow pace of a game, but the 9070 XT is hitting 78, so a much smoother experience, and it's 37% faster. At 4K, you would have to use quality upscaling to get the 7800 XT near 60 FPS. It hits 55. Again, this is a very slow-paced game. It'd be fine at those settings, but the 9070 XT is going to be smoother at 75 FPS, 36% faster. This game, at the time of filming, does not support a driver-level override for FSR 4 or an in-game implementation. Now, we've got a typo, so this does not say Hellblade 2 Senua's Saga, unless she got guns all of a sudden. So this says Call of Duty right here. So read that, Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Anyway, apologies for the typo there. At 1080p basic settings, notice this is basic settings now, not extreme or max or anything, because I think that's more realistic to how people actually play competitive games. We are seeing the 7800 XT hitting 248 FPS and the 9070 XT hitting 302, giving it a 22% lead, but at 1080p resolution, it's probably held back a little bit. Now, you may notice the missing sign on certain assets on the 9070 XT, and I think that was just a brief game glitch that was patched, and I validated my testing results for frame rate after it was updated, and my frame rate numbers are still good, but whatever issue was happening here on the 9000 series was solved. Also, it was happening on NVIDIA cards as well during this time period, so this was not like a driver issue or anything like that. It was just an issue with the game on a certain date when you tested it. Anyway, the issue is resolved, but I didn't run through the tests, all of the tests again, because I did validate the performance didn't change between updates. Anyway, at 1440p basic settings, the 9070 XT is 34% faster at 252 versus 188. And at 4K basic settings, the 9070 XT is 34% faster at 149 versus 111. However, if you're playing at 4K settings, it might make sense to use upscaling. This game does support a native implementation of FSR 4, but first let's do a like-for-like test. So using FSR 3, this time I thought I'd be more aggressive. This is a competitive game, so using performance mode upscaling, I think makes sense to try to increase frame rate as much as possible. So here we're seeing the 9070 XT reach 237 FPS versus 174 on the 7800 XT. They're both perfectly good, but the 9070 XT is 36% faster. Now, like I said though, this game does support FSR 4, and this one's native. You don't need a driver level toggle, it's supported right in the game. And if you look at like the windows in the background, if you're on mobile, you can pinch to zoom and things like that. The image quality is significantly improved when you're in the performance mode. At the quality level, like we explored earlier in the video, it's a little more subtle, although noticeable. At the performance mode, it's very noticeable, the improvement in image quality here. Now, that being said, notice how much less performance we've gained. The 9070 XT is still faster here, but it's only hitting 202 FPS, still perfectly good, and it's doing it with much better image quality. However, FSR 3 is just a faster algorithm, and that seems to be especially apparent comparing performance modes here. And so we're seeing the 9070 XT lead drop to 16% as opposed to what we were seeing earlier. Let's move on to Ghost of Tsushima. And this time I do have the correct name typed in, so I'll go ahead and slide out of the way here. We are seeing 1080p very high settings, both GPUs doing very well. 166 versus 127. It's 31% faster on the 9070 XT. 1440p very high settings, and again, very high is the maximum settings in this game. Again, both GPUs doing extremely well at 93 and 126 FPS. That does put the 9070 XT 35% faster. At 4K max settings, we're seeing the 9070 XT 42% faster, and now I'd say you have an objectively noticeably better experience here because the 7800 XT is only hitting 53. It's playable, but probably not the nice smooth frame rate that you're looking for. The 9070 XT at 75 is much more likely to be able to just play at native res here and not need to upscale unless you feel like it. Now, if you do feel like it, this game does not feature a driver level override at the time of filming for FSR 4. It does just support FSR 3. So like for like settings using quality, which again with FSR 3 looks okay at 4K output quality settings. We're seeing the 7800 XT hit 79 FPS and the 9070 XT hit 110 FPS at the same settings, putting it 39% faster. In Final Fantasy 16 at 1080p Ultra settings, both GPUs do well. The 7800 XT is hitting 85 FPS, but the 9070 XT can hit 113, putting it 33% faster. At 1440p Ultra settings, the 7800 XT is hitting a little over 60 FPS here at 63, but the 9070 XT has a much smoother experience at 84, putting it 33% faster. At 4K Ultra, neither GPU is doing great. The 7800 XT is at 34 FPS, and the 9070 XT is 41% faster, hitting 48 FPS. So this is another time where I think upscaling may make sense. If you use quality level upscaling with FSR 3, again, there's no FSR 4 support yet in this game. We're seeing the 7800 XT hit 73 FPS, good experience, whereas the 9070 XT is hitting 92. Now, let's go ahead and pop out for some final analysis. Let's look at some graphs and then talk about pricing. So how much faster is the 9070 XT? So this graph shows all of the tests I ran in this video, but the number is not frame rate. It's the percentage advantage for the 9070 XT. And you can see that it varies. Another way of looking at the same list is instead of sorting by game, we could sort by best advantage to worst advantage, and it looks like this. So we see that the data set ranges from 16% faster, but that's not a like-for-like test. That's using FSR 3 versus FSR 4 in the performance mode, up to 72% faster when we're looking at Cyberpunk RT Ultra. So we can see that the biggest wins are generally in ray tracing, and when we get out of the ray tracing results, the leads drop but are still noticeable. The geo mean of this entire data set puts the 9070 XT 44% faster. However, I understand that some of you are either on a 7800 XT because you don't care about ray tracing, or you're considering an AMD GPU because you may be less excited about ray tracing. So if you just don't care about the ray tracing results, I have that for you as well. So if we take out all of the ray tracing results, this is what the data set looks like. And the average lead for the 9070 XT drops to 40%. But it's still 40% faster on average when we remove ray tracing from the results. Now, the other way we could look at this, though, is the flip side, which is what if you only care about how much ray tracing improved? And that's an interesting thing to look at, considering AMD claimed massive improvements to ray tracing. So if ray tracing only improved by the same amount that everything else did, then they didn't really improve their ray tracing technology relative to any of their other improvements. But if we sort for ray tracing, I'm getting the result as 56% faster on average, and it seems like the heavier the ray tracing workload, the larger performance improvement we're seeing, at least based on the games that I tested here. So overall, the 9070 XT is showing 56% faster in ray tracing, 40% faster without ray tracing, and if you just mix everything together, I'm getting 44% faster. But if you included a higher percentage of ray tracing tests and a lower percentage of non-ray tracing tests, this would skew higher. And if you had less ray tracing or no ray tracing, it skews lower. Anyway, there's all of those results. So we've established how much faster it is. Now let's talk about value from a couple of ways of looking at it. One is it worth upgrading from a 7800 XT to a 9070 XT? And the other is, if you're looking at buying GPUs right now and you're considering saving some money and getting a 7800 XT versus spending more and getting a 9070 XT, which one should you pick and is it worth it? Okay, well, we need to establish something. First of all, is this enough of an upgrade to be worth it? And I would say yes, if the price was right. And I'm not sure the price is right. But just in general, is this a noticeable performance uplift? Personally, I've just my whole life kind of felt like I'd like to get at least a 50% performance uplift for it to be like a meaningful upgrade. Because think about it like this. If you had a 50% performance upgrade, then your 60 FPS experience becomes a 90 FPS experience. That kind of a situation. Or a 40 FPS experience becomes a 60 FPS experience. That's what a 50% performance uplift looks like. Now, in reality, what it probably means is you adjust to different graphics settings or less resolution scaling and things like that. But in addition to the almost 50% performance uplift, that makes a lot of ray tracing experiences, which have an even higher uplift, more usable now. You can be less scared to turn on ray tracing on the AMD GPU. And what I actually personally find the most exciting thing here is the FSR 4 upgrade versus FSR 3. I have a separate video topic talking about an image quality analysis between FSR 3 and FSR 4, and it is a night and day improvement. It is much better. Despite being a slower algorithm, so you get a bit less of a performance boost, you could use the performance mode, and I think in many ways it looks better than the quality mode of FSR 3. So it's a very big upgrade in the upscaler, which means overall, I think you could actually use a bit more upscaling, use upscaling a bit more aggressively, or use it more often, and actually feel like you're ending up getting more than this 44% performance uplift. So for all of those reasons, I do think it is a noticeable upgrade to go from a 7800 XT to a 9070 XT. But now let me rain on that upgrade parade a little bit if you're watching this video at the time of filming. Right now, around the 9070 XT launch, availability anywhere near the stated MSRP is very bad. So in other words, let's do a little bit of math. If we pretend the MSRPs were real, we're getting a new card at $599, and we're comparing it to a card that had a, I think it was $499 MSRP, or was it $550? Let's just call it 500 because it was available at 500 for a while, and I'm pretty sure that was the MSRP. So we're talking about 20% more money, but theoretically you're getting 44% more performance and a better upscaler and an even bigger performance improvement in ray tracing. So it seems like it's a pretty good value improvement. The problem is, well, let's look at this. First of all, in-stock models are just non-existent right now at MSRP. And not only that, it gets worse because some of the models that were supposed to be MSRP, like the ASRock Steel Legend, which is, by the way, the model I tested in this video for the 9070 XT, well, this is being listed brand new at $669.99 now. So $70 over MSRP. And other MSRP cards, like the Power Color Reaper, are listing at $100 over MSRP. And the Asus Prime, which again was supposed to be an MSRP card, is now listing for $720, $120 above MSRP. So it's very much looking like the actual MSRP price, once the initial rebates from AMD ran out, is much closer to $700 than $600. So if you look at it from that perspective, if we call this more like $700 if you can snag one when they happen to be in stock and then sell out instantly, now you're looking at spending 40% more money for like 40% more performance. That doesn't seem great. So this card's way less exciting if it costs $700 compared to if it costs $600. It's kind of make or break on whether this is an exciting generational uplift. And the even worse news, if you're looking at this right now as of the time of filming, is that 9070 XTs, even at these prices, are out of stock. So even if I wanted to buy the more ridiculously expensive models, these are out of stock. In fact, there's none of these in stock without buying some silly bundle deal kind of thing. Anyway, so that makes this less exciting. So a lot of these are trying to be scalped right now, is the honest truth. Like if I check eBay, oh, there's some 9070 XTs for sale. And actually they are seeming to sell. So if I sort by sold listings, these are selling for around $1,000, give or take a bit. Now, some of them sell a bit less, but we're talking that more $700 price point. give or take a little bit here on those listings. And if we look at the general available pricing, it's mostly in the $900 to $1,000 range. So if we look at this on the current market, what does a 7800 XT cost? Well, a 7800 XT, again, they're kind of out of stock new, at least at what was anything like their original pricing. But if we kind of do this eBay thing again, they are available in this $400 to $500-ish price point, although a lot are listed higher. Now, a lot of these are used rather than new, so that does affect the deal a bit, but $500 for sold listings is not uncommon. And if we look at the kind of general availability here, it's kind of this $400 to $500 range seems to have been the general availability for a lot of the 7800 XT cards. So if we're looking at more like real world market pricing, so maybe you're somebody who doesn't already have a 7800 XT, but you're wondering, which should I buy? I could get a 7800 XT for around $500 on the used market, but I could spend around $1,000 and get a 9070 XT, or maybe we'll round it down to 900, be nice. So if we're looking at $900 versus $500, which is what the current real world market kind of looks like, although your $500 7800 XT might be used, so do factor that in a bit, it looks like you're spending 80% more money on that new card. And that seems like a bad deal. Because yes, you get the newer upscaler and you get 40 to 50% more performance, especially if you're leaning towards the ray tracing side of things, but it's not 80% faster. So if I was deciding which one to buy, I mean, I can tell you the better value is certainly in the 7800 XT. But also, man, even $500 feels bad, especially if it's used, because these were available brand new as low as like $450 and sometimes less towards the end of 2024. So this is all feeling really bad. That being said, we don't know when the graphics card market is going to go back to normal, especially with the United States and the kind of uncertain tariff situation right now. So I don't know what to tell you guys other than at current pricing on the market as it actually is, the 9070 XT is not a good deal at around $900. Don't pay that. Now, if you happen to see an MSRP model at $599, and AMD has said that they would like to make that continue to be available, perhaps provide more rebates to retailers to make at least some stock pop up at that price, I think if you can get that MSRP pricing when it flashes availability, that's a good price. If it's closer to $700, it's a lot less exciting, and we're talking more even value and no real generational improvement in value other than the better upscaler. So that's my thoughts on value at the end of the video. Hopefully that helps you out. Like I said, if you're already on a 7800 XT, the upgrade would be probably worthwhile at MSRP. But if it's above MSRP, I'd maybe wait and see if it does eventually come down closer to MSRP. Because the other thing is, the 7800 XT is still a very capable graphics card. We were generally testing out maximum settings in this video, and you don't have to even play games at max settings. That being said, in most of these games, max settings were still doing extremely well at 1440p and 1080p, right? So, I mean, look at something like Horizon Forbidden West. This game looks gorgeous, and at maximum settings, we're getting like over 80 FPS here. So that's the other thing. You don't always just have to upgrade your graphics card because something better became available, right? If you're still getting a good experience, generally, a new generation will come along that will offer you better value, although current market right now is a little bit crazy, so hopefully things settle down. I hope all of you have an excellent day.